Hello, I'm Michael Schumacher and I'd like to welcome you for the Nürburgring Europe Grand Prix.
For nearly 70 years, a medieval castle in Germany's Eifel Mountains has presided over the greatest test of man and machine in racing, the Nürburgring. More than 17 miles long, with over 170 corners, the Nürburgring ruled with the likes of Monza and Spa as the European super tracks of the first half-century of motorsports. The races were epic, and the drivers were heroes, the stars of the day who became known as the Ringmeisters. Today, the new stars of Grand Prix racing have returned to the new Nürburgring to finish the Formula One season on the European continent with a party near the banks of the Rhine. The track is new and unfamiliar. The weather is wintry, but the field is ready. For the first time in a decade, Grand Prix racing is back at the Nürburgring. At stake, the Formula One World Driving Championship. For the first time since 1985, the new Nürburgring plays host to Formula One Grand Prix racing. Welcome to round 14 of the 1995 Formula One World Championship, the Grand Prix of Europe. On a very gray, foggy, and cold afternoon, welcome to northwestern Germany. Hello again, I'm Bob Varsha. Conditions are very different from what we had a week ago in Estoril, Portugal, a mere 1,600 miles to the southwest. On the hill behind me, trust me, the old castle still plays guard over the 14-mile Nordschleife, or North Loop of the old Nürburgring circuit, which is still used for racing to this day, but not by contemporary Formula One machinery. For them, the old South Loop has been turned into the new Nürburgring, 2.8 miles around, very smooth and fast, although in these constantly changing conditions, there's no predicting what we might see today. Coming into this race, Michael Schumacher leads Damon Hill by 17 points for the 1995 title. But behind them is the man who was arguably the fastest in Formula One of late, Scotsman David Coulthard. And he and a couple of his mates have threatened to obscure the run for the World Championship. For more on that, let's get down to the paddock and Derek Daly.
Bob, there have been some significant driver announcements in the last 7 days. One predictable, one a surprise, and one a shocker. Predictable, Coulthard is a McLaren driver for 96. Surprise, Brundle goes from Ligier to Jordan. The shocker, Eddie Irvine now drives for Ferrari in 96. Now, to give you an idea of the millions of dollars that seems to be free-flowing around these Formula One paddocks, when these deals have to be done, here's some figures. When Jordan had a seat, Peugeot threw some money into the pot to pay Brundle more than $2 million because of his experience. Ferrari had to pay a check for $5 million just to release Eddie Irvine from the contract he signed less than 2 weeks ago with Jordan. They then agreed to pay him another $3 million salary. So let's see, between Schumacher and Irvine, buyout and salary, Ferrari are now $32 million in the red just in driver salary before they ever build a car. Eddie Irvine, as you can imagine, has been the centre of attention here all weekend. He's often controversial and unpredictable. He's with our James Allen.
Yes, thank you, Derek. One of the most down-to-earth men in the pit lane, Eddie Irvine, has just landed a deal with the world-famous Ferrari team. He'll be paid millions of dollars. He'll have to choose whether or not to move to Monaco. All the women, most beautiful women in the world, will want to chase after him, and he'll have a Ferrari company car. Now, Eddie, you're not going to let this go to your head, are you?
Most of it's wrong, so it's not a problem.
There's a lot of mystique attached to Ferrari. You've certainly discovered that this weekend. How many people suddenly went to it?
Yeah, it's just been non-stop, to be honest. It does get in the way, although it's the first weekend after having signed, so hopefully for Japan and the rest of the season it'll quieten down a bit.
Rubens told me yesterday he thought you'd be a stone in Michael Schumacher's tennis shoe. That's fair.
I don't know, I'm not going there to be a stone in his tennis shoe. I'm going there to help Ferrari win the World Championship.
Andy, close my mic. It's deafening.
I think it's all come Eddie's way because he's a former
David, this time last week we talked just before the start of the race. You went out from pole and won it. What about this race?
Well, obviously I'm hoping to use the advantage of pole to go out and win again, and it's a completely different complexion with it being wet.
Big day for you today. You were announced as a McLaren driver for 96. Are you sad to be leaving Williams?
Absolutely. You know, I've had a good 2.5 years at the Williams team, but I'm extremely excited about the prospects of working with the plan.
Good luck for the race.
Thank you very much.
David Coulthard starts from pole for the third straight race. We'll be back to bring you the starting grid and then get things underway. Stay with us. This ESPN Speed World presentation, the Formula One Grand Prix of Europe, is brought to you by Firestone, America's tire since 1900. And by Volvo. Volvo reminds you to drive safely. Welcome back to the Nürburgring. The weather has not improved much, and it should make for a very interesting day of racing. Now let's take a look at some of the incidents that have taken place during practice and qualifying in preparation for this race. We've had on and off rough weather. In the third lap of the first practice, David Coulthard took it off the racetrack, but he wasn't alone. Jean Alesi did the same in his Ferrari moments later, and the biggest accident of all on the first day, Olivier Panis in the Ligier. His throttle stuck open, and the eventual crash destroyed the monocoque. On Saturday, that is, the rains came down and we had spins all around the racetrack. The chicane in particular has been taking a beating as the drivers try to figure out the track. But it's always entertaining to watch the best in the world struggling with grip conditions. Just ask Damon Hill. This morning in a rain-drenched warm-up, he spun twice coming out of the final corner and still managed to lap faster than the back row of the grid. Speaking of the grid, it's about time to line up and get started, so let's review that by turning to this year's first Prestone starting grid. On the pole for the third straight time, David Coulthard of Scotland in the new Williams Renault 17B, lapping at an average of 129 plus miles per hour, alongside Damon Hill, who said after Portugal, "I'll need a miracle to win the World Championship." He came here and said, "I believe in miracles." On row 2, Michael Schumacher, the world champion, with a 17-point lead over Hill. He'll start alongside the Ferrari of Austrian Gerhard Berger, one of only 2 drivers in this field to have been here for the last Grand Prix in 1985. On row 3, Eddie Irvine, a future Ferrari driver. He'll be in the Jordan Peugeot, alongside Jean Alesi, who will be out of the Ferrari at year's end. On row 4, future teammates perhaps. Johnny Herbert, for now in the Benetton Renault. He may be Heinz-Harald Frentzen, Sauber teammate next year. Row 5, all McLaren Mercedes. Mika Hakkinen and Mark Blundell. Mercedes has 8,000 guests here this weekend. Row 6, Rubens Barrichello of Brazil in the Jordan, and his teammate for next year, Martin Brundle, who will start today in the Ligier. On row 7, Jules Bouillon of France in the Sauber, his best qualifying of the year. Olivier Panis of France will be alongside in the Ligier. On row 8, Mika Salo of Finland in the Tyrrell, alongside the Minardi of Portuguese Pedro Lamy. Row 9, Max Papis of Italy in the footwork, and the Minardi of Luca Badua of Italy. On row 10, Gabriele Tarquini of Italy returns to Formula One, replacing the injured Ukio Katayama in the Tyrrell. He'll be next to Andrea Montermini of Italy, his qualifying best of the year for Pacific. On row 11, Taki Inouye of Japan in the second footwork, next to the 44 to Brazilian Pedro Diniz. And on row 12, Roberto Moreno in the second 40, next to Jean-Denis Delatraz, who was a full 2 seconds slower than Moreno in qualifying. The top 6 in the warm-up, Coulthard, Berger, Hill, Schumacher, Barrichello, and Alesi, all within 1 second. Now, Derek, let's take a look at the new Nürburgring.
This could be classified as one of the contemporary racetracks that Formula One now run on. It has got a natural amphitheatre down at the Dunlop curve, and it has the best spectator views of any Formula One racetrack I know. 180 miles an hour on the way down to Castro, and the Coca-Cola curve, vital for straight line speed.
There's the first right-hander, and note that the pit exit takes the cars right onto the racing line for that first turn. These are the Castrol S's. The field is away. Lots of plumes of water still in the air. While we have a chance, let's get a live last-minute update from James Allen in the pit lane.
Bob, it stopped raining a few hours ago, and in fact the track is drying out a great deal. Most of the teams are not running full wet settings, which is the high downforce, and some have even opted for slicks. As I know at the moment, only Jean Alesi, but obviously as the race comes on, we will try and find more for you. David Coulthard spun on his parade lap. He had to run back and get into Damon Hill's spare car, so a disadvantage there, a big disadvantage for the pole sitter. Firecrackers going off from the grandstands. Fantastic atmosphere from the German fans here. I think we're in for a cracking race, Bob.
I'm with you there, James. We'll have to check as the cars go by on that first lap who has opted for slicks and who for wets. Fireworks, the order of the day at every race in Germany. Here's a look at our post-time weather conditions. 50 degrees, but it feels a lot colder as the wind brings the temperature down. Humidity about 90%. And the chance of rain, you've got to be kidding. You don't go anywhere without a complete wetsuit, boots, and an umbrella here at the Nürburgring.
from that in-car camera shot of Damon Hill's car, you can see that the wet weather tire here has a distinct half and half pattern. You see the wet tread on the inside, and as it moves to the outside of the tire, beginning to go back more to a slick type of tire. But the in-car cameras that we've seen now, the Benetton and the Williams, have wets, and here's the man that's taken the gamble. The track is drying. It will only take, I would say, 4 to 5 laps of these cars running on the same line to completely dry this. On board with Michael Schumacher, the wet weather setup, third on the grid. The 2 Williams cars ahead of him, we believe, are on wets.
Slowly onto the front straightaway. There was a large hotel built right on the start-finish straight here at the Nürburgring, for which you can have a room for a cool $450 per night with a 4-night minimum. And there it is, the Dorint Hotel. They have a lovely hotel near the Spa course as well. The field beginning to come to the starting grid.
Berger is on slicks, and the 2 McLaren cars have also gone for the gamble. They are both on slick, dry weather tires.
And that should make the start plenty interesting as they try to funnel 700 to 750 horsepower per car through those triple plate clutches. There is Michael Schumacher. There is David Coulthard. The field slow to get to their grid positions.
Coulthard in the spare car. He had a problem with his race car on the reconnaissance lap.
A problem at the back of the grid for one of the Arrows cars. And it will be pushed off. I can't see who is that, Taki Inoue? Massimiliano Papis, we are now told. And where are they going with him now? Where are they going with him? The grid is set. Are they going to push him to a starting position?
This is absolutely unbelievable. They are pushing him all the way down the center of the grid and have forced a red flag start situation. I can't believe they just did this.
James Allen, what can you tell us?
Well, I'm as mystified as you are, Bob. They're pushing him right down the middle of the track, but it gives us an opportunity to look at the sort of tyres that everybody's using. And I can tell you that David Coulthard is on wets, Michael Schumacher is on wets, Damon Hill is on wets, Jean Alesi and Gerhard Berger are indeed on slicks, Eddie Irvine is on wets, and here comes Max Papis, if it is Max Papis, yes, coming down the middle of the track. So I'll try and find out from the FIA exactly what's going on here. I'll get back to you.
Well, there you see the entire grid sitting there waiting while officials try to decide what to do with Papis. And now we have crewmen over the wall into the pit lane. That can only mean we are going to have a stoppage.
What Papis has to now do is start from the pit lane. The problem the stewards have had here is, how do you get him to the pit lane? I've never seen a red flag caused by this type of situation in the past. And of course the poleman David Coulthard, who probably hasn't even seen Max Papis yet, has no idea what's going on here. Did you see the steam coming from both of those McLaren cars on the grid?
They're using the Mercedes V10 built by Ilmor in England. They are not happy with their start positions well back, while 8,000 Mercedes employees and guests sit in the grandstands, including one totally new grandstand built down in the first turn specifically for this race.
And Mercedes have entertained many people here this weekend, and we were the lucky recipients of some of their hospitality on Thursday, because they laid on a fleet of C36 Mercedes cars with all their racing drivers, including Mika Hakkinen, to take anybody who wanted, with the invitation, of course, for a trip, a high-speed trip around the 14 miles of the old Nürburgring. And what a treat that was. We, of course, went with Bernd Schneider, the German champion, and he knew exactly what he was trying to do when he scared us.
Absolutely. After plunging downhill, the highlight for me was when his cellular phone rang. He opened the console to answer it, all the while steering at top speed around the Nordschleife. Unbelievable. See you in a moment. Welcome back live to the Nürburgring, near the village of Nürburg, not Nuremberg, the site of the famous war trials. That's several hours to the east of here. Around old Nürburg, near the Rhine Valley, is the Nürburgring, site of today's 14th round of the World Championship. We saw Johnny Herbert right there. We are getting, I believe, a 1-minute board after the most bizarre circumstance. The footwork arrows of Massimiliano Papi suffered gearbox problems at the back of the starting grid, could not get to his grid position. Instead of just pushing him into the pit lane, officials pushed him down the middle of the starting grid, and the entire start procedure was called off. Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, and James Allen with you. Here's Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who will be a huge crowd favorite here today.
You've never seen so many flags in particular as the Germans tend to buy to support their Formula One heroes. And every time they appear out of corners or down straights, the fireworks that you saw earlier on has been going since Friday morning, since these cars began to run. But an interesting scenario has now come up, because as these cars sit here, obviously the track gets drier and it falls into the hands of anybody who may have taken a slick, a gamble to run the wet weather tires. The two McLarens, we believe, and the two Ferraris, and there may be some more. But the front two rows are the first three cars are on wet weather tires.
When they do get to slicks, they will be on Goodyear's soft C compound. But given the conditions on the wet, dry nature of the racetrack, it is hard to say how many pit stops we're going to have. Down in the pit lane, James Allen.
To the best of my information, I've just been talking to a few people, team owners. Eddie Jordan just told me, yes, it's 1 lap less. So 1 lap less of this Grand Prix as a result of that bungled start by Max Papis.
Thank you, James. It will be 67 rather than the scheduled 68 laps of this 2.8-mile circuit.
And here's this amphitheater I mentioned in the track description. It goes downhill into a big bowl, and one of the 40 cars is in trouble, never made it off the line. That means at least he will have to start at the back of the grid if they can get him away from there safely. Here they come up, fireworks and all up, out of the amphitheater, uphill. Tremendous elevation changes here. Very, very smooth surface. If it does rain, this is regarded as having reasonably good drainage by racing circuit standards.
This race was sold out back in April, but just last week, a block of the e-tickets, if you will, the best seats available, the gold tickets, went on sale for the equivalent of $366 US apiece. Today, the place is packed, although it will not rival the all-time record crowd for the old Nürburgring. 450,000 people, it is estimated, turned out back in 1954 to watch the Titans, the Ascaris, the Fangios of the world go at it around the Nordschleife.
And they didn't have to go around corners like you'll see right here. This is the chicane designed, we believe, by Michael Schumacher, and this has been a mess all weekend here. Far too slow, far too tight for a Formula One car. You can see the tracks going across the mud and the dirt there, but a criticized part of this racetrack. Jean Alesi trying to get some heat into those slicks, and there's Moreno in that 40 car.
Point out, Derek Daly has been suffering with a cold since we got here from sunny, warm Portugal. We'll go as far as we can with that voice.
It's been a fight trying to keep the old vocal cords. The French doctors have been stuffing everything they have in their bags into me now for 2.5 days. And I suppose this is as good as we can expect it to be.
There is David Coulthard. He will be in the McLaren Mercedes camp next year, has been for several months, if you believe the rumors. There is Michael Schumacher.
And the dry line is down the outside, so everybody, including Damon Hill, Berger behind him, you can see is on the wet racetrack, so a big advantage for everybody, including the pole sitter, down the left-hand side. I'm sure he's motioning to the 40 car of Moreno.
And we have hands being waved at the back. The other footwork is now in trouble. Nevertheless, the revs come up, and we have a start. This race, David Coulthard, Michael Schumacher, and Eddie Irvine slots up into the third spot. A bad getaway there for Damon Hill.
There's nothing he could do. He was wheel spinning on the wet racetrack. Everybody suddenly sliced off to the left-hand side. But David Coulthard is clear, and Eddie Irvine running strongly in third. Look at the McLarens fight with the Ligier.
Eddie Irvine, Damon Hill looking for a way around. There's Johnny Herbert. There you see Taki Inoue in the other footwork car being pushed off. And look at the crowd going wild for their man Michael Schumacher. First time through the amphitheater section.
Damon Hill now has his hands full behind Eddie Irvine as David Coulthard has that clear run which he seems to take advantage of at the start of these races. Firecrackers go off, smoke screens for Schumacher.
Wisps of water there as the cars struggle for grip. That is Jean Alesi. Just behind him, Rubens Barrichello and Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber Ford moving up quickly. He is around Gerhard Berger.
The gamble they're taking is that the line that you see here will begin to dry all the way around the racetrack, and everybody on wet tires, Coulthard and Schumacher, etc. Look at Damon Hill behind Eddie Irvine, side by side in the braking zone, and he pulls it off.
So Damon Hill moves up to third. There's Rubens Barrichello struggling behind Jean Alesi.
Slicks versus wet weather tires. Ooh, Schumacher's all over the back of Coulthard here.
Across the line they come to complete the lap. Coulthard, Schumacher, then the rest of the field. Damon Hill said something curious earlier this week. He said, maybe losing in Portugal was the best thing that could have happened to me. Now I have nothing to lose. Schumacher has everything to lose. Sounds like whistling past the graveyard to me.
If it continues like it is, I would say between 5 and 10 laps, you're going to see that line dry. Then the slick tire cars, the Ferraris and the McLarens, will begin to come on like gangbusters. So David Coulthard, who's running away now from Schumacher, needs to put as much distance between himself and the dry weather tired cars if he's to stand a chance of not going down too far.
Well, Coulthard draws away a moment. Let's take another look at that pass by Damon Hill on Eddie Irvine for third, approaching the chicane.
He comes down the inside. He's on the wet part of the racetrack. Then he goes onto the dry here. And Eddie Irvine wisely, seeing he's half a car length behind as they put the brakes on, lets the potential world champion slip through the chicane.
On board with Michael Schumacher. Schumacher, the first German since Wolfgang von Trips to start a World Championship Grand Prix here at the Nürburgring while in the championship lead. There is Damon Hill, who needs to finish ahead of Michael Schumacher with 3 races remaining on the Pacific Rim following today's event here in Germany.
Well, Schumacher is definitely quick to the apex of the Coca-Cola corner, which is the last corner onto this front straight. The surface is very, very smooth here. Drivers say this racetrack can be boring. What they mean is the constant radius corners. Turns right, you point. Turns left, you just squirt. He said this racetrack is not interesting from a driver's perspective.
We took a walk around it on Thursday when we got here, Derek, and you were somewhat critical of the width of the racetrack as well.
I was so surprised that there is so much room down the front straight, and when you come to the corners where you do all your work and do all your passing, suddenly it takes that room away from you. I would think of all racing facilities, the Nürburgring had the potential to build the passing racetrack in all of Europe, and I don't think it was accomplished.
Damon Hill has set the fast lap of the race thus far on lap number 2. Meanwhile, word from the pits is that Taki Inoue has gotten back out in his footwork. We'll take a quick time out and return for more live from the Grand Prix of Europe at the Ring. Welcome back live to the Nürburgring. Michael Schumacher chasing race leader David Coulthard. Damon Hill coming up from behind. Now, we want to remind you, today, of course, is the last day of the regular season in baseball, and we've got all of the top games for you. Today on ESPN2 at 1:30, it'll be the Yankees and the Toronto Blue Jays with wild card implications. We'll also be checking in with the Houston Astros Chicago Cubs game starting at 2:15, and then at 4 o'clock on ESPN, or whenever the NASCAR race this afternoon finishes up, we'll be switching around among the San Francisco Giants and the Colorado Rockies, Seattle and Texas, Oakland and California. We're all over the baseball season for you today here on ESPN and ESPN2.
Great fight here. Schumacher and Damon Hill choose to go down the middle of the racetrack to get the water to cool down those tires. And Heinz-Harald Frentzen, to the frustration of everybody here, will have to make his way to the pit lane for a 10-second penalty. He was judged, there it is there, to have jumped at the start. And how frustrating that has been most of this season for the people who got caught. Let me give you an update on the cars that have slicks on versus the cars with wet weather tires. The 3 leaders are running away. The slick tired cars, the Ferraris, are running 2 seconds a lap slower at the moment, but they are beginning to catch them. The gap is coming down. It's now just under 2 seconds. So 3 or 4 more laps time. You will see if it doesn't rain. Is it raining? Is that rain we see, or is that spray coming from Schumacher's car?
Well, my guess at the moment is spray, but you can never tell here at the Nürburgring. We're less than an hour's drive from the Spa-Francorchamps course, and much like Spa, the wetness tends to just hang in the air. The tall pine trees around the racetrack tend to keep it close. Very wet. Let's go down to the pit lane where James Allen has an update on Roberto Moreno's situation.
Derek spoke at the top of the programme about the amount of money being thrown around at the very front of the pit lane, $30 million just on drivers. Well, spare a thought for the 40 Corsa team. This is the first time they've had their semi-automatic gearbox in competition, and it's let them down. That was the problem for Roberto Moreno.
Well, I guess we can say pretty definitively it doesn't work quite yet.
And they were tempted not to use that in the race. They ran it in practice. Moreno qualified with it, and there's Frentzen, who has not taken his 10-second penalty yet, but he will be. There's Johnny Herbert being challenged by Alesi. You can see now the slick tires. Oh, he's in the braking zone. Herbert comes down side by side. See the dry line? See that line beginning to dry? Now let's watch Alesi, see what happens. Right now, Damon Hill has fastest lap of the race at a 37.1, and Alesi's fastest lap 39.2. Still a 2-second gap.
Compare that with the dry weather performance of these cars. Coulthard and Hill on the front row in qualifying in the 1:18s. So as usual, the wet track severely affecting the times. We saw Jean Alesi a moment ago. He is several $100,000 lighter, at least in principle, following some comments made on live Italian television in Portugal a week ago, during which he slammed team director Jean Todt and made mention of several anatomical parts in the process. The team fined him $200,000, and when we last heard, Alesi wants them to reduce that penalty, and he will pay it to charity.
And the reason the argument even started was Jean Todt, the team manager, asked Jean Alesi to move over and let Berger by, which he refused to do. Interestingly enough, Gerhard Berger said, I respect his decision not to move over and let me by. Here's a fight here now. Look at Damon Hill beginning to challenge Michael Schumacher.
How many times have we seen these guys nose to tail this year? They have collided 3 times. Getting over to the wet part of the track now to keep those grooved rain tires cool.
Everybody at Williams was very coy about whether Coulthard and Damon Hill would drive to team orders. Everybody said you'll have to ask the drivers. It certainly has been discussed as Frentzen makes his way all the way down the pit lane. He cannot stop for tires or fuel as Peter Sauber looks on. You cannot make any changes to the cars. You stop for this 10 seconds. But we do not yet know whether David Coulthard will help Damon Hill or not in the event of it becoming an issue.
Talking about those jump starts for a moment, while we were making our track tour on foot on Thursday, we came upon the FIA timing crews putting the sensors in the track. We asked them how it works, and the guy said, well, it senses the movement of the car when the lights are on to start the race. And I said, well, does it sense movement going backwards, say? And he said, yes. So I gather you could coast in any direction and be called for a jump start.
Bottom line is, so as you understand, as soon as you bring your car to a standstill, whether you're at the edge, the top of your box where you're supposed to start or not, as soon as you come to a standstill, the electronic eye deems you as being your starting position. If you then creep forward at any time, even if the lights are red, you have jumped the start. I'm not sure every driver understood that at the start of this season.
With 7 laps complete of 67 scheduled, down 1 from the beginning of the race thanks to that red flag period. David Coulthard leads Michael Schumacher, but Damon Hill has other ideas about Schumacher in second place. Irvine, Alesi, and Johnny Herbert follow in the 6 points-paying positions. Behind them, Rubens Barrichello is 7th, Gerhard Berger 8th, Martin Brundle now 9th, Heinz-Harald Frentzen dropping back down the leaderboard. Salo is 10th, Panis 11th, Bouillon 12th, Lamy 13th. And we'll see whether Heinz-Harald Frentzen trips the lights. He does not. Luca Badoer is 14th. Heinz-Harald Frentzen 15th. He pitted from 8th position. That shows you just how much those 10-second penalties can hurt.
And the line is clearly getting drier now. Damon Hill, you saw that, still sets fastest lap 36.85. John Alesi, who runs 5th, 38.0. He's now only 1.2 seconds off the pace of these leading cars. So the gamble hasn't paid off yet. But boy, this is a fight. Look at Damon Hill. He's all over him.
That was the line he used on Eddie Irvine, but he didn't have the extra inches he needed to get alongside Michael Schumacher. A top speed battle into the braking area. Out they come. Damon Hill looking for a way by. Remember all the suspended suspensions for driving tactics earlier this year. These guys are going to have to be careful.
Les Jones made an interesting comment. He's the chief mechanic on Damon Hill's car. He said, you know, I just feel that Damon Hill has the measure of everybody, including David Coulthard this afternoon. Certainly what we see here, he seems to have the speed of Michael Schumacher, and from the fastest lap that we see he has put in, we can only presume he has the speed of David Coulthard, who is, remember, in the spare car, not his car of choice.
The battle cools momentarily. We'll take a quick timeout. We'll be back for more live from the Formula One Grand Prix of Europe. Stand by. Back live at the Grand Prix of Europe. Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, and James Allen with you. This is Rubens Barrichello fueling up and going from the wet to the slick tires. Meanwhile, on the racetrack, Michael Schumacher leads Damon Hill. They are running second and third behind race leader David Coulthard, who is right there, ready to lap traffic on this, the 10th lap of the race.
And that was Roberto Moreno, so he did get that 40 car with the semi-automatic gearbox running. Fastest lap of the race now belongs to Michael Schumacher. Coulthard gets it sideways under power, so these tires beginning to lose the grip they need, and Alesi is still in the 37s, so Alesi is not a challenger yet. I wonder, did Michael Schumacher know something about the surface here at the Nürburgring that the Ferrari drivers may not have known, and in fact it takes a long time to actually dry out, because the gamble to go on slick certainly has not worked yet. Oh, look at Schumacher now behind David Coulthard.
Schumacher has not raced here since 1990 when he won the German Formula 3 championship. James Allen down in the pit lane has a comment.
Bob, it's the first time now we're seeing the slick runners running the same lap times as the wet runners, and behind me you can see the Williams mechanics are coming out, and just over on my right you can see that the Benetton mechanics are all set with the slick tyres for their drivers. It takes 21 seconds. We timed it this morning with Michael Schumacher from the pit entrance to reaching the garage. It's a very, very long and slow pit entry, not something they wanted to do too much of this weekend. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens when they come in at the same time.
And the key to making everybody run from the garages is they have a scoring monitor down there. And John Alesi just set the fastest lap of the race at a 36.3. He is currently running 2 seconds a lap quicker than the leader, David Coulthard. So they know they cannot stay out too long. But right now, John Alesi is 14 seconds behind the leader. That's only 7 laps if it stays as it is. In fact, the gap will get bigger as the laps go on between wets and slicks. So these leading boys, I think, will head for the pit lane very shortly.
Hill closes up on Schumacher. It's getting very dirty there in the chicane. Whoa, and Michael Schumacher has gone to the pits. So the first die is cast in this pit strategy contest.
And now the Williams boys cannot stay out too much longer. James Allen.
The 2 World Championship contenders come in together. Michael Schumacher first. He's in front on the pit lane, and Damon Hill is behind him. So the advantage lies with Schumacher. He's back out there already. It's slow for a little bit more fuel going in, perhaps, Damon Hill's car, but he's back out on the track.
A bit longer, but not appreciably so. Michael Schumacher will exit just behind his teammate Johnny Herbert on the racetrack. Oh, and there's the problem with that pit exit.
We've seen that all through practice and qualifying. The cars coming out of the pit lane go right onto the apex point of that fast 135-mile-an-hour right-hander, and there's nothing you can do. You can't get out of the way. So Johnny Herbert will now see Schumacher on slicks probably whistle by him quite easily, and I can only presume that David Coulthard is on his way to the pit lane, and how quickly can they get him out? If they're slower than 6.6, Michael Schumacher could take the lead.
Johnny Herbert leads his teammate Schumacher. Herbert, with 2 Grand Prix victories this year, will not be driving for Benetton next year. In fact, at this point, we do not know where Johnny Herbert will go. You watch Damon Hill struggling with traction right there. Looking for a way around the Ferrari. And he gets an opening. Oh, not quite. On the long downhill run, right-hand kink coming up. David Coulthard, the race leader, is in the pits. Here's James Allen.
Dear Bob, of how much of a risk these guys know they're taking. The Williams mechanics were testing their fire extinguishers as Coulthard came down the pit lane. It's so dangerous down here. It's very serious business. No refueling for Coulthard this time. Slick tyres, and the Benetton boys are waiting for Johnny Herbert.
And watch for Michael Schumacher. Surely he will take the lead. Where is he? Here's Coulthard. He's going to go to the apex. Oh, can he block Michael Schumacher? Can he? Yes, he does. He just about keeps the lead. Remarkable effort.
Meanwhile, in the Benetton crew, Johnny Herbert is in, one of the mechanics wearing a head-mounted camera. Herbert will come back out. As you also saw from that picture at the pit exit, Jean Alesi managed to stay in front of Damon Hill. So now the running order will juggle once again.
That was a great effort by the Benetton team to do a pit stop in 6.6 seconds. That surely should have given them the advantage. I'm sure they thought they had the advantage. And then David Coulthard, Schumacher obviously lost the 3 seconds on the outlap. And all credit to the Williams team, who really, quite frankly, have been beaten many times in the pit lane by the Benetton team. They pulled one off there when it really counted. Look at this. Damon Hill loses the position.
So the struggle continues and the action continues in the pit lane. Down this very quick. Oh, Damon Hill almost throws it away, desperately trying to get around the Ferrari.
There's no need for Gerhard Berger to make things easy. This is a battle for position. It is 5th and 6th. 5th and 7th. 5th and 6th, I'm sorry.
On to the start-finish straightaway they come. Jean Alesi is the race leader, so Ferrari's strategy to start on slicks appears to be paying off right now. It is Alesi, then Eddie Irvine right there, then David Coulthard, then this man, Michael Schumacher, then Berger and Hill. So the top 6 cars are effectively nose to tail. At least 2nd through 6 certainly are.
And look at Eddie Irvine. He's still on those wet weather tires, so he is definitely a sitting duck for everybody who's going to come and pass him. But Jean Alesi, the gamble beginning to pay off. How can Pat Pease have a 10-second penalty when he didn't even start the race and he started from the pit lane?
Oh my. Problems continue for Jackie Oliver's team, but there is some news regarding them, including a possible $12 million sponsorship package next year. Talk about that later on. We'll be back in a moment.
Play later.
We are back live. You ride along with Damon Hill, who has now moved around Gerhard Berger and into 5th position with a spectacular diving pass into the chicane. Just ahead is Michael Schumacher, the one car that Damon Hill must be so concerned about today. The running order is Jean Alesi, 15 seconds up on this train of cars now. Alesi just drawing away. Will Damon Hill make a move here in the chicane once again? No. Late braking there by Schumacher. You saw his car just lunge away from Hill under braking. And now Eddie Irvine, the 2nd place car, has taken his Jordan Hart to the pits. There he goes to the right of your screen.
He hung on grimly because he didn't want to make too many more stops as long as he could stay on the racetrack. Oh, Panis is off. Panis and the Ligier destroyed a car on Friday. You saw that in our highlights package. Eddie Irvine, 8.5. Good start for the Jordan. Now, the length of time he stayed out, which was 15 laps, may determine how many more pit stops he has to make.
And he has clean track out in front of him. Now let's take a look at some of the action that preceded Irvine's pit stop. Here is Damon Hill, the second pair of cars coming at you.
And this was scary. Hill comes down the inside. Watch the surface change. Right here, the car begins to get away from him. He locks up the fronts and just misses the Pacific and squeaks in through in under Gerhard Berger, who he found very difficult to pass. Watch the steering. Watch the steering. See that? Locked the fronts, lost the steering for a second. So Delatraz almost got collected by Damon Hill. Thankfully, he was far enough ahead, and Damon Hill goes round the outside of Michael Schumacher. Williams 1-2.
Running in second and third, they are running nose to tail. Actually, Jean Alesi still leads now by nearly 20 seconds. Coulthard, then Hill, then Schumacher, then Berger. And we have a car stranded. Looks like one of the McLarens has spun at the chicane. Mark Blundell, and he stalled it. He will get out. Oh, look at the right rear tire.
I don't know whether that was the cause of him spinning. Look at Schumacher, gets by Damon Hill again. What a dust-up this has become.
Amazing how one car will be stronger than another at a given part of the racetrack. Gerhard Berger was prepared for a lunge around Damon Hill. Now Damon Hill renews his attack on Michael Schumacher. He has to get ahead of him and stay ahead of him and score more points to have any hope of pushing the World Championship fight to the season finale in Adelaide, Australia.
And just look at that lead John Alesi had. 18 seconds over the second place car of David Coulthard. But here's the dust up here. Here is the World Championship being fought over just like it should. Tooth and nail, side by side. Oh, look at this. Hill is quicker. Hill is... Oh, look at this. Oh, he nearly loses. He's off the road. Whoa. You don't need much of a voice to describe that.
Oh, and Michael Schumacher is going to raise some eyebrows with that defensive drift. As at Spa, where he was absolutely miraculous on slick tires in the wet and drove Damon Hill off the road. There, perhaps the racing world was prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt. But that move right there, I'm sure Damon Hill would question.
Oh, that was a bit scary. Here's another look at the first pass. Damon Hill puts on Michael Schumacher, simply outpowers him, goes down the outside. This is the world feed replay. Look at Hill gets into trouble. I think he hit him. I think he may have actually touched. Here it is again. Hill is now in trouble. He's on the white line. He loses the back of the car. He gets it sideways. He struggles and grapples to control it. And he gets her back in line.
Oh, and now he looks down the inside. He's got traffic. That's Montermini in the other Pacific. And Schumacher is on the far side of Montermini.
The problem is now, when you change your line, it is so difficult and dangerous to go offline onto the wet surface, because that's when you're in the lap of the gods. And then the white paint, which they only painted here on Thursday evening as we were walking around the racetrack, that's actually almost 12 inches wide. And then you put some water down on it. There is zero grip on that, as Damon Hill now knows.
Now let's recoup. It is Alesi, 21 seconds up the road. Then Coulthard, Schumacher and Hill in this battle, followed by Berger and Heinz-Harald Frentzen. Is that? Yes, car number 30. He is climbing out of the gravel trap. And what a tremendous disappointment that will be to this vastly German crowd.
Oh,
that's why he was helped out.
Tries to go down the inside of Denise. Maybe that was a rather ambitious move, but Frentzen, there it is again from the helicopter. No room down the inside, and Frentzen, who was off 3 times this morning in the warm-up alone. We saw him in our highlights package off the racetrack. He's been a busy boy. But what a crowd favorite.
Heinz-Harald Frentzen was offered the late Ayrton Senna seat with the Williams team following the disaster at Imola last year in the San Marino Grand Prix. He turned it down then. He He said this weekend he desperately wanted that ride for 1996, but was beaten out by IndyCar champion Jacques Villeneuve. There's Michael Schumacher, still twitching. There are still wet patches of the racetrack out there.
But on the dry patches, to give you a quick update, Jean Alesi is lapping more than 2 seconds a lap faster than everybody else. There it is there. Look at that. 32.9. Back to David Coulthard. Look at this. Damon Hill down the inside, but look at Coulthard's time again. 35.4. Jean Alesi literally running away from everybody here. Boy, this is a bit too close for comfort here, boys.
Pick a line, any line.
See how 700 horsepower tries to fight and get away from you. You grab wheel spin, back the throttle off, you get grip, you get more wheel spin. That's what he gets paid $6 million at Ferrari to do, though. Jean Alesi control that, and Damon Hill $7 million next year to drive that Williams.
That was Max Papis getting out of the way in the footwork car. Jackie Oliver's Arrows team has presented a $12 million sponsorship package to an American-based company, Global Brands. You see the name Hype on the back of the car. That is a Global Brands product. They are the folks who came up with the marketing idea known as the Ultimate Dream, in which you could buy an old Formula One car, learn to drive it, and travel the series next year with a team. Nobody, to our knowledge, has picked up on that deal yet. But Jackie Oliver would be glad to get that $12 million sponsorship for next year. Now down in the pit lane, here's James Allen.
With Mark Blundell. Mark, what exactly happened put you out of the race?
Basically, I tried to follow Alesi through that right hand there onto the back straight, and close behind him, the front end of the car understeered up onto the curb. And then once I was on the curb and halfway on the grass, the car just lost control, spun and hit the barrier, and then bounced back out. But there's a right rear corner problem with it, so I decided just to pull out the race. But I mean, you know, the end of it all, it was a fairly uncompetitive car we had to drive out there, and I'm not particularly happy with that. So it's a shame. It's the first problem I've had out all season, so it's just a shame that it's in Germany and the home of Mercedes.
Very quickly, the conditions out there very difficult. Obviously, you started on slicks.
Yeah, we started on slicks, and in fact, the conditions were a lot worse than what we thought they were going to be, and that put a big question mark over our decision.
Thanks very much, Mark Blundell.
Mark Blundell, who continues to ask questions about Indy cars. He is definitely showing a very keen eye to exploring all opportunities there are on the other side of the Atlantic, because he has watched just about every IndyCar race this year and is a big fan of racing in the States.
Out of the front of this queue, you saw the other McLaren Mercedes right there on the left of your screen. That's Mika Hakkinen. He has been lapped. He runs in 14th place overall. Welcome back to a great scrum of a Formula One race. Bob Varsha, Derek Daly, and James Allen with you for the Grand Prix of Europe. Final race on the European continent in the 1995 Formula One season. You ride with Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari in 5th place. His teammate Jean Alesi leads as we work lap number 23 of 67. Michael Schumacher runs 2nd, and in a moment we'll show you how he did it.
And Mika Hakkinen just broke up the fight between the 2 World Championship contenders and David Coulthard. He blocked David Coulthard, and this is Michael Schumacher into the chicane, slides down the inside to take 2nd place from David Coulthard, and there's Mika Hakkinen goes on, and of course then Hakkinen just pulled over and let Berger and Damon Hill go by after he had already done the damage. Here it is from Damon Hill's camera. Schumacher just squeezes down inside David Coulthard on the drying line that's down the inside of that chicane, and now will David Coulthard be fast enough to stay ahead of Damon Hill?
Ferrari pits ready for Jean Alesi.
Of course, look at the German crowd. They know that Ferrari will have to bring Jean Alesi in. He again sets fastest lap, but he's on his way to the pit lane. Crashes over the curbs. Crashes over the curbs again.
Jean Todt and Niki Lauda looking on. Now, if you've been following Ferrari fortunes, and Damon Hill has gotten around David Coulthard, German television, having no luck at all. Every time they go to a replay, something happens on the racetrack. Niki Lauda is back with the Ferrari team. He had been let go in a dispute with that man you just saw him with, Jean Todt. He is back here this weekend, and there is certainly an interesting story there that we will someday learn.
Unfired. Unfired is the term that has flown around the paddock here during the weekend, and James Allen has caught up with Heinz-Harald Frentzen.
Heinz-Harald, a bit of a rough way to go out of your home race. Tell us about it.
Well, it didn't start good for me. I had already the time penalty for 10 seconds, and I didn't gain any places, but I had to come into the pits and start from behind. I catched up, but then there was a guy who was 2 laps behind. He didn't see me, and we crashed into his Ajak.
Thanks very much, Heinz.
Thank you, James. John Alesi leads. Schumacher, Hill, Coulthard, Berger, Irvine, Herbert, Barrichello, Brundle, and Salo, the top 10 at this point. John Alesi continues to just pound around this racetrack.
And this will become a straight fight again between Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher, because as soon as Alesi, and remember, Berger has not been in yet, so he will be out of this fight. Look at this here. David Coulthard not being able to fend off the challenges of Gerhard Berger. So can Damon Hill catch Michael Schumacher? They have clear racetrack, and the fight continues between Hill and Schumacher.
And between Berger and Coulthard. Berger drifts over on the line. Coulthard has to concede it. Now Berger, rare arm in the air, means I'm heading for the pits. So he will pit from 4th place. James Allen will be there to greet him. And Coulthard will take over 4th once again. Follow him in.
Gerhard Berger comes in to change his 4 tyres and put on some fuel. It's been really tough for him to stay out there on those slick tyres. New tyres going on. It's a long stop for the Ferrari team, and he's back out in the race.
Long stop for Gerhard Berger indeed. Pitting on lap number 25. Back out in front of Eddie Irvine. Gently, boys. So with that, our order is Alesi, Schumacher, Hill, Coulthard, Irvine. Nope, excuse me. Berger back out in front of Eddie Irvine.
Now the interesting thing will be to watch the gap between Michael Schumacher and that man at the top of your screen, Damon Hill. Now Alesi still stays out there. He has a light fuel load. But with those tires at the end of this stint, you can see how well these Goodyear tires lasted this particular weekend here, because he has yet to make a pit stop. 25 laps gone, and he just sets a lap that is nearly 2 seconds faster than the next fastest lap on the racetrack.
Could he be planning a one-stop race on soft tires? The track is not terribly abrasive, and that's the sort of radical strategy that Ferrari needs to take if they are to win. Meanwhile, Michael Schumacher going around Roberto Moreno.
And that's the problem I mentioned earlier. You saw Schumacher, the world champion, had to leave the dry racing line, make the pass on the wet, and then try and sneak back in to the high grip surface before he begins to turn into the apex.
Michael Schumacher continues in 2nd place, but perhaps he's ready to give up 1st place to Jean Alesi as long as he, Schumacher, can stay ahead of the man immediately behind him, Damon Hill. Goes around the other 40 Ford of Pedro Paulo Diniz.
See the rundown. Johnny Herbert not in a points-paying position. Barrichello, who has not matched Eddie Irvine's pace at all this weekend, and is said to be furious that Eddie Irvine got the Ferrari drive, because Barrichello, if you think back, offered to drive for nothing if he could just get a chance to drive one of the red prancing horses of Italy. And Eddie Irvine himself said every driver dreams of having an opportunity to drive a Ferrari.
Good point. Imagine what Barrichello must think to see his teammate Eddie Irvine wander over to take that Ferrari drive for a mere $3 million a year. There is the castle. We'll be back to the Nürburgring. We are back live at the Nürburgring. Bob Varsha and Derek Daly, glad to have you with us. James Allen is in the pits. And Jean Alesi.
I'm just talking to Goodyear tyre technicians. They say the wear on Berger's tyres is excellent. No problem with them at all. In fact, they could have gone through the race on a one-stop strategy in terms of tyre wear. However, Berger is doing two-stop strategy because of the fuel. Jean Alesi, well, that's the big question mark. There's no evidence yet. The mechanics aren't getting ready to change his tyres. Everyone's very relaxed in the Ferrari pit. Big smiles because he's running real quick at the front, and his tyres are obviously no problem for him.
Thank you, James. You noticed on that in-car shot of Jean Alesi, he has a light flashing built into his steering wheel.
He was never happy with the lights on the dashboard. He said the steering wheel always obscured his vision. So Ferrari came up with a novel idea that they would put the rev counter lights, and that's what you see flashing there, actually in the middle of the steering wheel between both his hands, and he's been a happy camper ever since. Now, here's another quick update. This is obviously a race of the gambler, because Jean Alesi taking the gamble to run of those slicks, it has fallen into his lap, as James just told us. If he has enough fuel, and it looks as if he may have, if he has enough fuel to make just one stop, he can actually stop, get fuel and tires, and go back out without losing the lead to Michael Schumacher, because the last gap that we saw was more than 40 seconds. In fact, it's 43 seconds now on this lap. So Jean Alesi, whether it was through strategy or clever decisions, has fallen into the right setup here, and he looks as if he is just sitting pretty here.
More news. Jean Alesi has reset fast lap on each of the last 6 laps. Shades of Juan Manuel Fangio back in 1957 when he did something similar to run down the Ferraris of Collins and Hawthorne en route to the late Maestro's greatest race ever.
And this man here is chasing him, and every time he goes by his pit board, it goes up a second. In other words, he is losing over a second a lap to Jean Alesi. But Bob, you mentioned it earlier, he does not care what Jean Alesi does. If he wins the race, he doesn't care. He said, I don't care if David Coulthard wins the next 4 races, as long as I simply finish ahead of Damon Hill. That is my mission.
You see, the lower number was the time at the last lap. The upper number, the gap between Schumacher and Hill this time around. So Damon Hill is obviously closing up. Now there is Jean Alesi doing an incredible job for Ferrari in the lead.
He is absolutely flying around this racetrack. Suddenly we saw Damon Hill begin to close in on Michael Schumacher, and here's evidence here. He now has set the pace. He is now closing in on Michael Schumacher. Oh, risky for Alesi there, and he shakes his fist. Don't worry about shaking your fist. Just get on with the business at hand here. They're not going to make it easy. Barrichello tries to sneak down the inside of Alesi. That is not for position. Obviously not for position. Barrichello running in 8th place.
Barrichello has now been put a lap down. That leaves 7 cars on the lead lap as you watch all the action in the chicane on the super slow motion. Rear tires still steaming from the heavy brake job Alesi gave them, and then he gives the old Italian thank you very much.
I don't think that was thank you very much. If that was IndyCar and they used a specific gesture, it would actually draw a fine, but a simple wave doesn't draw a fine at all. Schumacher now with his mirrors full of Damon Hill. Hill fastest lap, which is over 9/10 quicker than Michael Schumacher went on the last lap.
Down in the pit lane, more from James Allen.
Bob, I'm just wondering the ease with which Coulthard dropped from 2nd to 4th after Schumacher passed him. Probably team orders came into action because Hill needs all the points he can get. He's 17 behind Schumacher in the World Championship. So when Schumacher was past Coulthard must have known he couldn't live with him and said, hey, let Damon, and Damon was allowed to go past 2. Possibly some team orders. We'll never get them to confirm it until long after the race, but it's something I think has probably happened.
This is the Grand Prix of Europe. We are working lap number 31 of 67. The order is Jean Alesi, and there you see the difference now between the laps that he is turning and those of Michael Schumacher in second. But of more concern to Schumacher is the man just behind him, Damon Hill, closing right up as Schumacher is balked by the footwork car.
Well, that's where he got in trouble the last time when he went outside and he saw the footwork car was there, so no option for Damon Hill, but you can still see that narrow band of dry racetrack is where they have to play the game right now, but Damon Hill clearly faster than Michael Schumacher.
I mentioned IndyCar a couple of times in this program. Among the interested spectators at this event, Roger Penske is here. I'm assuming as a guest of Mercedes, but perhaps not.
And to my surprise, Roger Penske was invited into this morning's FOCA meeting. So that was unusual to have a IndyCar representative sitting in on the FOCA meeting. I asked Ken Tyrrell, obviously it was not secretive business being discussed, and he said no, and we were quite happy to have Roger sit in to listen to what we argue about.
Ken Tyrrell has been coming to these races for a long time. His man Jackie Stewart had one of the great drives in Nürburgring Nordschleife history back in 1968 on a foggy day. Probably foggier than the one we have today, but not by much. Stewart went around and beat the best in the world by 4 minutes. And he, of course, is an advisor to David Coulthard. In fact, Coulthard freely credits Stewart for giving him a pep talk that simply set the Yacht Scott on fire. Whoops. In replay here, that is Eddie Irvine being given a nose job by Johnny Herbert.
And Herbert's in trouble, though, because, look, he's broken the nose. He broke the front wing off his Benetton, so that will cost him a pit stop at least. There it is. Drag the nose off, stick a new one on. So Johnny Herbert may have got the worst of that battle with Eddie Irvine.
Indication yet whether Irvine got back onto the racetrack. Herbert hitting from 7th spot. As a fan and you'd like to buy a nose piece for a Formula One car, what kind of a check would you have to pony up?
Oh, I would say you could persuade Benetton to let you have one complete for $15,000, $20,000 maybe.
There's the
long stop here, so obviously some serious damage done to Johnny Herbert's car. If he sits there much longer, that engine will overheat.
Meanwhile, the battle continues. There's Herbert going back out. Schumacher has now set fastest lap. Damon Hill is still right there, barely a second behind.
He is now 40 seconds behind Jean Alesi. He has made up 3 seconds. Jean Alesi is running a second a lap slower now than Michael Schumacher, but he has enough time to stop, get fuel, get fresh tires, and continue on. So the gamble hasn't played its hand out yet, but Jean Alesi is still very much in control here because Schumacher is so far behind.
Coming up behind Martin Brundle in the Ligier. There's a look at just a little bit of the Nordschleife. In fact, as the cars approach right here, there in the foreground is where the racetrack leaves to join the Nordschleife. And the entire loop is used for a touring car 24-hour race during the summer. Ooh, from Johnny Herbert's nose camera, that was the contact with Eddie Irvine.
Wow. Talk about being right at the heart of the action. That's how close they've got. And, of course, you can actually hear that brittle breaking of carbon fiber. You can actually hear it break Johnny Herbert's front wing off. And that, of course, resulted in that lengthy pit stop and pushed him all the way down to 11th place, 1 lap down.
Damon Hill takes fast lap, going tit for tat with Michael Schumacher. The Benetton pits are ready, as are the Ferrari team. There are the top 6, the points-paying positions. Here comes Jean Alesi, and James Allen is there.
Guys, if Alesi can pull this off today, it'll be one of the most inspired gambles in modern Grand Prix history. The second set, I remind you, the second set of tyres for Jean Alesi today go on. The fuel goes in. Everyone's taking it nice and easy. Got 2 sets of pneumatic jacks ready because they were worried they might have had a problem with the hammers. and all the fuel has gone in. Lacey's rejoined. The question is he still in the lead to pull off one of the great romantic gambles of our times?
Well, we're about to find out as Jean Alesi heads for the pit out, and this may be the answer to the question as Michael Schumacher pits from behind him. So Jean Alesi will definitely, well, I say definitely, perhaps I shouldn't. Watching from the crew cam. Off come the old ones, on go the new ones. Fuel going in. Meanwhile, Damon Hill has gone by, and I believe Jean Alesi has retained the lead in this race.
I'm sure he has retained the lead. Brand new tires on Michael Schumacher's Benetton. Just listen to Ferrari V12. Dab, dab, dab on the power. But Jean Alesi, head and shoulders above everybody else this afternoon in the Ferrari. And he has gone more than half distance before he stopped for tires and fuel. I don't see anybody catching him unless he throws this thing into the guardrail himself.
Jean Alesi, one of 3 first-time winners in this 1995 season. When was the last time we had at least 3 debut winners? You'd have to go all the way back to 1982 when there were 5. Remember the names? K.K. Rosberg, Patrick Tambay, Michele Alboreto, Elio De Angelis, and Riccardo Patrese. My thanks to Rick and Charles and all the gang, my Ferrari fanatic friends back in Atlanta, Georgia, for that tidbit. Jean Alesi now with a 5-second gap, and the hopes of all Ferrari fans everywhere riding on his shoulders. There is Damon Hill and the look he does not have of the race leader. We'll be right back. This ESPN Formula One presentation, the Grand Prix of Europe, is brought to you by Toyota Motorsports. Our minds are always racing. Back live at the new Nürburgring. Bob Barsha, Derek Daly, and James Allen with you as Jean Alesi thus far. Excuse me, that is Gerhard Berger. Meanwhile, his teammate Jean Alesi is in the midst of a brilliant strategy and a brilliant drive with just one stop, the only one we think he will make. He is out front. Berger right there runs in 5th.
Mika Häkkinen brings the McLaren down into the pit lane. He was a lap down, running in 11th place, nowhere near the pace. Imagine having 8,000 guests here watching your every move. Mika Häkkinen so busy. He was at all the dinners that Mercedes and McLaren put on. Brand new tires again. Sticker on that left front.
They brought out a completely revised rear end of their chassis, designated it the MP410C at Portugal. Häkkinen said there was a fundamental problem with it, and they abandoned it for the most part at that race. On the Monday after Portugal, however, Häkkinen was 0.7 of a second quicker than his qualifying time for that race. So there was some hope in the McLaren-Mercedes team camp coming to this race, but it does not appear that those dreams will be realized here today.
And the fight is beginning to unfold here because despite Jean Alesi's emotion and talent in that car, Damon Hill, who continues to set fastest lap of the race, is beginning to close down on Jean Alesi's lead. Alesi, remember, has a much heavier fuel load than Damon Hill, and Schumacher, last time by, just set fastest lap of the race.
Now let's double check on Gerhard Berger's situation with James Allen.
Bob, I'm just making my way up towards the Williams pit, but as I left the Ferrari pit, I saw the mechanics holding the steering wheel. When Berger comes in, he's going to have a new steering wheel. Obviously some problem with the electronics on the steering wheel of the car he's got.
All right, thank you, James, as you ride with Michael Schumacher. Sharply uphill here, and then a very quick left and right section.
So the Diamond Vision on the right-hand side there, that's the amphitheater. Everybody sees the complete racetrack. Jean Alesi now under attack from Damon Hill, who has to make another pit stop, we believe. We believe he does have to make one more stop.
Onto the runoff, back onto the racetrack, flashing across the start-finish line at better than 140 miles an hour.
David Coulthard still running 3rd. He's not in our picture. Michael Schumacher a second, 2 seconds behind David Coulthard. But this is the fight here with 30 laps to go. Again, you see the dry line. They have to keep the cars in on that high grip surface. This is one of Damon Hill's favorite overtaking maneuvers down here at the chicane. There's the diamond vision. You can see himself on television.
Oh, yeah, like he's watching.
Oh, they do, believe it or not. They can see.
I know they have before.
Remember Jean Alesi's comment after Canada? He watched Michael Schumacher take a steering wheel off on the Diamond Vision television, and he knew that he was possibly out of the race. In fact, he wasn't out at that particular time, but at least it gave Jean Alesi the update.
Into the chicane, and out they come. No chance there for Hill.
Well, you see that kick? You see that kick of power for Alesi, and he gets it sideways under braking. So he is under very, very heavy pressure from Damon Hill at the moment. Will Jean Alesi be forced into a mistake here by the Englishman?
There you see the big gap from the second place car of Damon Hill back to David Coulthard. More than 21 seconds behind now. There are the rest of the gaps being reviewed. 22 seconds back just behind Coulthard. In fact, just a second behind him is Schumacher. And then it's 14 seconds to Gerhard Berger. Here is Coulthard in for his second and we presume final stop. James Allen.
Yes, David Coulthard's second stop of the day, of course, from third place in the race, and this is the fuel and tyres that will take him through to the finish. The question mark is, did Damon Hill take on enough fuel to make it to the finish the last stop? I don't think he did. And what about Jean Alesi? Well, I'm pretty convinced that was his final stop. So it's all to play for. It's really going to be interesting to see how this one shakes out. Williams Mechanics actually, in fact, bringing out the tyres for Damon Hill, so expect to see Damon Hill in within the next lap or two.
Damon Hill is in deep trouble, James, as you were speaking. Oh, the car begins to break up. The front wing is all over the racetrack. He tried to go down Jean Alesi. Listen to the crowd cheer, because obviously their man Michael Schumacher now will have an advantage. Damon Hill is on his way to the pit lane, James. You'll see him very shortly. He was forced off the road trying to pass Jean Alesi in a hard move to pull off. James, get ready. You're going to see most of the Williams come down the pit lane, but most of the front end is halfway around the racetrack.
Jean-Denis Delatraz was being lapped in the process. There was nowhere for Damon Hill to go. He bounced off the track, back on, and shattered the front wing. All yours, James.
Terrible bad luck for Damon Hill. The chief mechanics telling him to just calm down, be cool. We're going to put the nose on there. We're going to give you some new tyres and refuel you and get you out there. Because for sure, Damon Hill's got to be seeing the red mist now. Can't believe it. The decimated remains of the wing are tossed away, and now the new tyres go on. It's a long, long stop for a World Championship contender, this. The bolts are done up, the final bolts on that new nose. Adrian Newey, the chief designer, is hopping up and down by the side of the car. In comes Gerhard Berger in the meantime for his new steering wheel. The nose is still being fixed. Oh, the time that is evaporating away from Damon Hill, and possibly his World Championship with it. His eyes aflame as he rejoins the European Grand Prix.
Thank you, James. You saw him wiggling the wheels back and forth. I think he had some question about the steering on that car. In fact, he's still working on it. I don't know if that was his input or the car's.
And we mentioned earlier how difficult it is to come off the dry line, go on to the damp. Suddenly you begin to fight for grip, and Damon Hill crashed over the curbing on the inside, and that was enough to break the carbon fiber stays as Gerhard Berger still sits there.
Berger pitted from fourth place on lap number 41 and stalled it. They're still trying to get it started. Now let's take another look at what happened to Damon Hill.
He's down the inside on the grass, smashes over the top of the curbing, may have in fact been clipped by Jean Alesi, and that might have been what broke that front wing off. But it's difficult to go down the inside. You get off the dry line, now you're in trouble. On the grass, he knows he has no option. Whoa, you can't see it, but I wouldn't mind betting that he actually clipped the rear of Jean Alesi's car. Look at Berger, still sits in there. It's over. The boys say it's over. Back in the garage for Berger.
Tough break for Gerhard Berger, who was in the points, and Ferrari is not out of the Constructors' Championship battle just yet. But this might well put paid to it. So now up front, it is Jean Alesi, still on what we believe to be a one-stop strategy, and there he is, the young half-French, half-Sicilian driver. Michael Schumacher now runs in second. There you see the gap, 15.8 seconds. Then David Coulthard, another 32 seconds behind. Damon Hill, 8.5 seconds behind his teammate Coulthard in fourth spot. Eddie Irvine managed to survive that conflict with Johnny Herbert. He will run in 5th, and Rubens Barrichello will put the other Eddie Jordan machine up into 6th. Then Mika Salo, Johnny Herbert, and Martin Brundle round out the top 10, followed by Lamy, Badua, Bouillon, Hakkinen, and Montermini. We'll be back with the castle in full view here at the Nürburgring. Back on a cold, gray day at the Nürburgring, you ride with Damon Hill, who is about 41 seconds behind the most important car in this race as far as he's concerned, the second-place Benetton Renault of Michael Schumacher. In between is Hill's teammate David Coulthard, and out front is Jean Alesi. So it is Alesi, Schumacher, Coulthard, Hill. Behind them, Rubens Barrichello and Eddie Irvine. We are working lap number 44 of 67 schedule. It's time for our Haviland race recap. The leader is Jean Alesi, as mentioned. He has led since lap 13 when he took over from David Coulthard. Those two alone have led the race. Many cars out of the race, many of them due to collisions. There has not been an awful lot of mechanical attrition thus far today, but we have had some spectacular collisions, and we have had some spectacular racing. Lots of passes behind the leader as we work our way into the final third of this Grand Prix of Europe. The third time a Grand Prix has been held on this new Nürburgring circuit. First time back in October of 1984 when Alain Prost won for McLaren over Michele Alboreto and Nelson Piquet. And then a year later, at what was designated the German Grand Prix, Michele Alboreto took the 5th and last Grand Prix victory of his career over Alain Prost and Jacques Lafitte in Ligier.
There you have it. Hometown boy. Fastest lap of the race, 22.4. Schumacher, who had his choice of cars to start the race with because he ran both of them in the morning warm-up this morning, and said he was happy. He thought he was going to be the measure of everybody. I don't think he quite took into account the possibility of what Alesi might try and do in that Ferrari. Of course, Alesi didn't know that opportunity would even present itself because the weather conditions were so differing when this race started. But look at the back markers now. Now he's caught behind us. Eddie Irvine's up there. Traffic plays such a big role here.
Uphill run to the chicane.
Barrichello in the Jordan. See that Jordan kick as you get into the braking zone. The Jordan, who has suffered from tremendous unreliability problems in the Peugeot engine this year, mainly due to a peculiar vibration around the flywheel, which in fact breaks the standard in Formula One used 3-plate carbon clutch. Jordan has had to go with the 2-plate, which at best they say is marginal, and that has broken too many times for their liking this season.
If the race were to end right now, that man, Michael Schumacher, would have a 20-point lead over Damon Hill. Let's get down to the pits and James Allen.
What happened exactly to put you out of the race?
It's the first set. I had a bit of high tire pressure in the rear and low in the front. I couldn't get in the wet. I couldn't get enough tire pressure to the front, so it was very difficult to drive. But then when it was drying up, it was going right. But I had cut-offs all the time on the engine. So I radiated the box to change my steering wheel because we have all the gearbox electronic stuff on the steering wheel. So they changed it, but the engine went out and something on the electronic box didn't work anymore.
It looks as though the calculated gamble on Alesi's part might pay off. It's not extraordinary.
Yeah, it was a bit gambling, but it looks all right. But anyway.
Thanks very much, Gerhard Berger.
Berger, who had the option to stay with Ferrari for a reduced salary from $12 million down to $9 million. He chose to forego that to move to Benetton to partner Jean Alesi again for a mere $4 million. So Gerhard Berger took a pay cut because he said he did not want to drive with Michael Schumacher. And there's a scary moment for the fueler of the Pacific car, and the driver knows something happened, but he completely bowls over his fueler, and Bouillon pulls off the second of the Sauber Fords.
Very scary moment of the Pacific pits. Jules Bouillon, for his part, one of the newlyweds in Formula One within the last 2 months or so. We've had about 4 drivers married, Mark Blundell being the most recent. Now out on the racetrack, there is Damon Hill, with Johnny Herbert behind him. The order is Alesi, Schumacher, Coulthard, and Hill, then Barrichello, Irvine, and this man, Herbert. In fact, Damon Hill is now the last unlapped car, last car on the lead lap. So Jean Alesi will be doing everything in his power to put Damon Hill a lap down, but Hill is basically just 56 seconds behind him right now, so Alesi is well behind.
The key is, though, he's 10 seconds behind Schumacher. Can he make that time up?
We'll find out. There's your leaderboard. We'll be back live to the Nürburgring. We are back live at the Grand Prix of Europe at the Hungaroring. Problems for Andrea Montermini creeping up the hill in his Pacific. Don't forget, later on today, we're going to be all over the final day of the regular season of Major League Baseball. All of our games with wild card implications, beginning with the Yankees at the Toronto Blue Jays at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2, with check-ins to the Houston Astros Chicago Cubs games beginning at 2:15. Then at 4 o'clock, or whenever the NASCAR Tyson Holly Farms 400 finishes on ESPN, our main game will be the San Francisco Giants versus the Colorado Rockies, but we'll also be watching Seattle at Texas and Oakland at California. So stay with us for all the baseball action here on ESPN. Now, in this Grand Prix of Europe, there is the leader, Jean Alesi, but Michael Schumacher in second is just eating him up, Derek Daly.
In the space of just 3.5 laps, Schumacher has gained 7 seconds on Jean Alesi. And that can't all be due to traffic, so we can only presume that Jean Alesi is in trouble, because you can see Schumacher is now less than a second behind him and closing rapidly, having reset fastest lap of the race each of the last 3 laps. Alesi is in trouble.
And Michael Schumacher has reset fast lap of the race, 1:21.596. Incredible speed under the circumstances on a very dry track. He qualified at 1:19.470, then improved it on a slightly wet track to 1:19.150. I know that sounds strange, but yes, on a worse track, he went quicker on Saturday. And Michael Schumacher is just rocketing up on Jean Alesi.
And we can also tell you that Schumacher is being shown a peculiar countdown on the pit board by his Benetton crew. I say peculiar, it's not to the end of the race, so we were beginning to wonder, does Schumacher have to make another pit stop? We don't know, but we're going to watch very carefully this peculiar countdown that he currently gets from his pit crew. But he's catching Alesi.
That might help explain Michael's great motivation at this point, trying to make up as much ground as he can. You see him sliding around there, leaving black streaks of tire rubber.
Now the traffic. Think how difficult it was the last time they came up to lap Mika Häkkinen. He didn't let David Coulthard through, and that allowed Schumacher to get past David Coulthard. Denise is off in the 40 car. Hopefully doesn't drag too much dirt or gravel back onto the racing line. That's 140-mile-an-hour corner exiting speed. Well, this crowd is about to go ballistic here.
Hard to overstate the significance of Michael Schumacher to his countrymen. In fact, Jean Todt of Ferrari was moved to say, there is Jean Todt, speak of the devil. Keep in mind, Ferrari is hiring Schumacher next year and not the other way around.
The two Tyrrells in tandem. Tarquini filling in for Katayama, who was not seriously hurt during that terrible, frightening first lap crash at Estoril last week. He does have a stiff neck. He elected himself to skip the European Grand Prix in order to be fully fit for the 2 Japanese races coming up, and that's what we suspected. Schumacher may be in for a second pit stop, which may let Jean Alesi off the hook here. Look at those vortices generated by that center mid-wing on the SS Norway as they SS Finland, sorry, as they come down this long back straight.
I hate it when that happens. Don't try this at home, kids. Derek and I are trained professionals. Now lots of traffic on the run up to the chicane. First Hakkinen, then Alesi. Ooh, and Schumacher balked just when he didn't want to be.
There he goes. There he goes.
Well, it may have happened at a perfect time for Schumacher, who was slowing anyway for the pit in.
So we know Jean Alesi can go all the way. We know that Schumacher on a light fuel load is quicker than Alesi, but he won't be on a light fuel load when he leaves here.
Now more than ever, the Benetton team needs a lightning pit stop. No problem with the tires. Fuel is out, and their man is on his way.
Now where is David Coulthard and Damon Hill? Coulthard was 40 seconds behind, so the chances are Schumacher will stay ahead of him. That's a Jordan. Where is Coulthard? Barrichello tucks in behind the world champion.
Damon Hill running about 7 to 8 seconds behind his teammate Coulthard. James Allen with more on John Alesi's situation.
You know, Bob, I think what happened there was that Schumacher was pushing very, very hard on the light fuel tanks, knowing that he was going to have to make a tyre stop, and Alesi has basically pacing himself. Ferrari team say there's nothing wrong with the car. He's just setting a target lap time, knowing that he's only made one stop in this race, and he's running through to the finish. And that's why I think we saw Schumacher closing up so much on Jean Alesi.
Speaking of working the tires hard, there is Eddie Irvine massacring one of the cones in the chicane. Well, he's had a fraught day. Michael Schumacher runs behind Jean Alesi. David Coulthard is in third. Hill is in fourth, but definitely closing up on Coulthard now. Rubens Barrichello runs in fifth, a lap down, followed by Johnny Herbert, Eddie Irvine, Martin Brundle, Mika Hakkinen, and Pedro Lamy. We'll be back with more from the Nürburgring. Final short. 55 laps complete of 67 at the Grand Prix of Europe here at the Nürburgring. Bob Barsha, Derek Daly, and James Allen with you. There is David Coulthard, who runs in third place, less than 20 seconds behind Michael Schumacher, who in turn is less than 20 seconds behind race leader Jean Alesi. And once again, Schumacher is quicker than Alesi.
And more importantly, he is 6 seconds clear of his team leader here, Damon Hill. And that is a 1-point difference between third and fourth place in the World Championship. So as the last 13 laps of this race gets run, I don't know whether Williams would consider that worthwhile, asking David Coulthard to let Damon Hill go by. Now, we saw that incident earlier in the pit lane when one of the crew members of the Pacific team looked as if he could have been seriously injured. James Allen, you have an update?
Yeah, that's right, Derek. I've just been talking to them. Paul Summerfield is the guy's name. He was a refueler, or he is a refueler. Reportedly, he has a fractured leg. It's so dangerous down here, particularly when the guys are pressing on after the stop to get out. We nearly saw something very similar when Michael Schumacher made his last stop. No sooner had his tyres hit the ground, he dropped the clutch and he was off. And the two guys who were changing his front right tyre had to do an incredible limbo to get out of the way. Otherwise, they would have ended up the same way as Paul Summerfield.
Pit stops can be chaotic in Formula One, with as many as 17 or 18 crewmen jumping on each car as it comes in. The problem is getting out of the way when it goes out.
The theme at the top of this show obviously encompasses money. You may be interested to know that the Pacific team, who I suppose struggle in terms, in Formula One terms, their budget for the season to do everything is $7 million. So just to qualify for a Formula One race without any hope of ever being truly competitive, you still spend in excess of $7 million.
Now, the length of time it takes the second place car to appear on that world graphic tells you something about how far behind race leader Jean Alesi, Michael Schumacher is. There he is, and he is still closing up. Now just 15 seconds behind with 12 laps. Make that 11 laps to go in the race.
Jean Alesi on the last lap did a 23.6. That is 2 seconds a lap slower than Michael Schumacher. So even ABCs and 1, 2, 3s will tell you that if Schumacher continues that pace, He may catch Jean Alesi again. There's the rev counter lights. They don't have time to look at the rev counter. Sometimes they barely have time to look at the lights. So the lights, even though you're looking straight ahead, you can still see the lights in your field of vision. And when the last red one on the right-hand side lights, it tells you to pull the paddle and change gear.
On the Formula One organization front, there has been some news you Formula One fans will be hearing in the near future. A proposal that came out of a meeting of the Formula One teams this weekend will be presented to the F1 Commission, mandating a minimum of 18 weeks between the end of one season and the start of the next, a maximum of 16 races. This year we have 17. The issue of three-car teams is still being debated, but it appears that next year we will have practice only on Friday and qualifying on Saturday afternoon in a single one-hour session with spare cars permitted. So you'll be hearing more about that as time goes by. Just 13 seconds now separates Michael Schumacher from race leader Jean Alesi. Stay with us. We are back live at the Nürburgring with 10 laps remaining in the Grand Prix of Europe, and Michael Schumacher, with whom you ride, continues to close up on race leader Jean Alesi. 13.1 seconds back now. Picked up another half a second on that last lap.
But obviously that is not enough, because there are simply not enough laps left. Watch him go over the chicane here. Watch the curb on the left. Crashes over the curb. That has been the normal line for most people here all weekend. And the harder you hit it, the faster you went during practice and qualifying. And the curbs, oh, look at this!
Damon Hill! A huge wreck for Damon Hill, who went off at tremendous speed and nearly collected a course car behind that tire barrier.
Well, well, well. David Coulthard was only 3 seconds up the road from Damon Hill, who has just had a frightening accident. Lost control on the grass that was obviously very wet and slippery. And when racing cars get on that grass, they just do not seem to slow down at all. So now a possible fourth place gone up in smoke. Here it is from in-car. It's down at the bottom of the amphitheater. Accelerate uphill. Everything's clear here. There's the diamond vision. He turns in. This is normally easily through here. And he turns back. It's all quite normal here. This is the left-hander's third gear. This is where he almost lost it earlier. Does he go on the curb? Oh, he does. He goes wide on the curb and loses it. 130 miles an hour. Watch what happens here. Oh, you see him put his hand up. He puts his hand up. He knows there's a heavy impact coming here. Here it is again. Oh, you can't see his hand in the cockpit. Oh, you can. He puts his hand up, and what a great job those energy-absorbing tires do. And Frank Williams says, for my World Constructors Championship, I just lost 4 points.
And with that, Damon Hill will not score today. If the race were to end right now, Michael Schumacher's lead for the World Championship would be 23 points. And with just 30 points maximum remaining in the last 3 races, that would be very difficult for Damon Hill to overcome. Now, you saw a safety car go off the racetrack there. There's your leader, Jean Alesi. James Allen is standing by with an important member of that team as he goes off and on at the chicane. And here comes Michael Schumacher. Down to James Allen.
Nicky, Jean Alesi at the front, but he seems to be having a few problems staying there. Schumacher's really bearing down on him, isn't he?
He's catching him about a second and left, so the last 2 or 3 races is going to be very close.
How difficult is it to be in Alesi's position, to know psychologically that you've got a guy who's after the World Championship bearing down on you?
Well, that's the worst thing when you're in the lead and you think you can win a Grand Prix, and the other guy is catching you rapidly like he does. So I hope that Alesi stays in front.
An inspired gamble at the start to go on slicks for Alesi?
No, he did the right. We did the right choice, but in the moment Schumacher is going much quicker, unfortunately.
Nicky, thank you very much.
Nicky, I suggest you take a deep breath, because if that helps Jean Alesi, take another deep breath, because he is in trouble here. He is all over the road. Michael Schumacher is coming at him like a ton of bricks. And within a lap or two, he's going to be all over the back of him, and Jean Alesi will do very well just to hang on here. And the crowd sense it. The crowd sense that something great might be about to happen. And I will tell you this, Michael Schumacher has driven as good a race today as I have ever seen him drive. And here's the type of costly mistake that is playing into the world champion's hands.
A great drive by Michael Schumacher. We need to go quickly to break. We'll do that and return live for more coverage of the Grand Prix of Europe. Stay with us. Back live at the Nürburgring. Slower traffic ahead. Here comes the battle for the race lead. The red Ferrari of Jean Alesi. The blue Benetton of world champion Michael Schumacher. You can bet this crowd of tens of thousands of predominantly German fans are on their feet. Tremendous slide down the inside of Pedro Lamy by Jean Alesi. And the world champion matches him step for step.
And Martin Brundle and Hakkinen are in a fight for themselves, for their own place. That's 7th and 8th, so they will not want to move over to give these boys room.
Dancing on the limit of adhesion with those tires. Flashbulbs popping in the packed grandstand. What a moment for Michael Schumacher.
As good a race as I have seen Michael Schumacher run. And here is his favorite overtaking position. The downhill run and in the braking zone for the chicane. Let's listen. Realizes not enough room to squeeze down inside Jean Alesi. He's currently second. He needs to make sure he doesn't get into any type of carambolage. Here, let's say that even though we're in Germany.
Absolutely, one of the world's best words. La Grande Carambolage, the big pileup. Completing lap number 64. 3 laps remaining. Alesi holds the lead. Michael Schumacher wants it. You have to go back to 1990 to find the last time Ferrari won more than one race in a single season. They won 6 back then. 5 by Alain Prost, 1 by Nigel Mansell. Jean Alesi could get their second right here.
An emotional uplift from the fans for Michael Schumacher. Anybody could win this race. Alesi locks up the front and he gives them an opportunity. Side by side, can he pull it off? Oh, it's a drag race up the hill. Alesi still has it.
Jean Alesi gives Michael a big spoonful of the kind of defensive driving we've seen from the world champion this year.
Oh, this is as good as it gets. Hakkinen goes off in sympathy. Good, get him out of the way. He affected the outcome of the leadership last time they tried to lap him. But Jean Alesi needs help. He needs help from somebody. Oh, Schumacher's right behind him. Here we go.
Outside through the chicane, side by side. And Schumacher does it. Now, can Alesi respond? No, he cannot. Look at the Benetton crew. And you can imagine what bedlam is going on in the grandstands as their man comes through with 2 laps remaining.
And the director of the world feed just got excited, totally forgot what picture he wanted to put up there. But what a squeeze job Michael Schumacher put on Jean Alesi to be forced to go down the outside. And how those 2 cars did not make contact, I'll never know, but this is as good as it gets. Schumacher down the outside. Side by side, he turns in. Alesi is there. Over the curbs. Alesi is still there. They fight for one piece of road, and Alesi finally moves to the left and allows him to have the lead. How close this was. Alesi fights all the way. But what a move by Michael Schumacher. Hats off to the world champion.
Great wheel-to-wheel racing. Alesi tried to respond, but the Renault engine powers Michael Schumacher away. And the laps continue to run down. There will be 1 lap to go next time across the stripe for that man, Michael Schumacher. They say he is worth a second a lap over everyone else in the field. Next year, that Ferrari will be his, and he may need that second. But what a driver.
When you get conditions that are changeable, like we have seen today, sometimes you get these tremendous battles where gambles sometimes pay off. And what a display by Michael Schumacher. Goes into the final lap. Martin Brundle is all by himself in 7th place. Mika Häkkinen now having dropped back to 8. The 2 Jordans are in the points. The 2 Benettons are in the points. So for the Constructors' Championship, which is the only thing that interests Frank Williams, they will drop more points. Oh, how great it is to see the crowd enjoy the display and to egg their man on.
Should he win this race, Michael Schumacher will break a tie with Sterling Moss on the all-time list. They are presently tied for 9th. Schumacher will take sole possession of that position. Just 6 victories behind Nelson Piquet in 8th spot.
This will be one of his most satisfying ever. I will guarantee you his arm will be stretched long and far out of the cockpit to wave at his countrymen, because this was one of his best.
His hometown of Kerpen-Mannheim is about 60 miles from here. Actually, Spa is closer to Michael's home than any other racetrack. But down to the line he comes, and this will be a home victory, make no mistake, for Michael Schumacher. And perhaps more than any other race thus far this year, this one may have put the nail in defense of his world championship. The next race will be the Grand Prix of the Pacific in Aida, Japan, a race moved due to the Kobe earthquake. There will be a great number of charity events put on to raise money for the victims of that earthquake, and Michael Schumacher will play a central role in all of that. There is David Coulthard, who runs in 3rd behind Jean Alesi.
And even the FW17B, which is the B version, the updated, the faster version, was not a match for Michael Schumacher and the Benetton today.
Hail to the champion, Michael Schumacher, taking one more step toward his 2nd straight world title. This crowd is delirious in Germany. We'll be right back. This ESPN Speed World presentation, the Formula One Grand Prix of Europe, has been brought to you by Texaco Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. Take it to the star. And by the Rheem High Efficiency 90 Plus Gas Furnace. You can relax with Rheem. Welcome back to a delirious Nürburgring. Their man, world champion Michael Schumacher, has put on a brilliant demonstration of driving talent. The fireworks are going off all the way around the racetrack as Michael Schumacher picks up his 17th career Grand Prix win. Let's take a look at the final results. Eric Daly, your thoughts?
I think this was as good as you will get. I enjoyed it. I saw Michael Schumacher show a true display of a world champion, as good as I have ever seen. He deserves to win this race. And quite frankly, Damon Hill said he needed a miracle before this race. I don't know what he needs now.
It appears it will not happen for Damon Hill. Here's a look at driver points following 14 of 17 races. 82 for Michael Schumacher, 55 for Damon Hill, and in 3rd place is David Coulthard. In the Constructors' Championship, it's looking more and more like Benetton Renault over the defending champion from Williams Renault. And Ferrari hanging in, but it's looking more and more like a Benetton and Michael Schumacher kind of season. Our next stop on the Formula One World Tour will be the Grand Prix of the Pacific on Sunday, the 22nd of October at 8 a.m. Eastern Time. This has been my 100th Grand Prix broadcast for ESPN, and I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. For Derek Daly and James Allen, thanks for being with us. Congratulations to Der Sieger, the winner, Michael Schumacher. So long from the Nürburgring in Germany.